technical support in virtual, and they loved it. People loved it, but it's very expensive. Okay, I come with a big price tag. Okay, that's just the way the thing works, and the prices are so low in Second Life that but the problem is you can hire people, booth bunnies in Second Life, but they're not going to have the sort of technical support expertise. It's very hard for a brick and mortar company to leverage that benefit of the face-to-face immersion that you get in Second Life. And I hinted at the margins are very low. I did the calculation once. Somebody sitting on one of those chairs that pay you Linden dollars is getting paid less than one of those teenagers sewing shoes in Nike's factory. Okay, that's who you're competing with. And it's very hard for a brick and mortar company with, that has to make a certain margin with shareholders and stockholders to succeed in that environment. The traffic is low. Most people approach it as like, this is the new 3D web. And there's a valid argument to that. There's lots of interesting things going on, but the one thing it doesn't have is the hit rate. Okay, you invest in a good website, you can get hundreds of thousands of hits. Okay, if it starts blowing your server out, well, IBM sells you bigger hardware. Crank up the hardware. Awesome with web server. The web has saved IBM's hardware. I mean, we can sell you big iron that can service any need. You can't do that in Second Life. 40 avatars crashes the sim. I think they're better now, but you get the idea. The traffic rate just does not compare, and that makes it a hard sell for businesses who are going to compare it to investing money in their website. So all of this together kind of explains why you don't see a lot of things there. I mean, it was an interesting thing. We tried it. A lot of people tried it. I'm not sure that many or anybody succeeded. I'd love to hear counterexamples and visit them, but again, it's what we did. We tried it. We came up. Now when customers come to us, we said, well, you don't want to set up a storefront on Second Life. That's probably not what you want to do. Now, another thing IBM did that was public-facing that I consider as one of a big unsung thing is the virtual business conduct guidelines, virtual world business conduct guidelines. Now, I talked a bit at the beginning, the rules of engagement, how I'm allowed to speak with you. Well, we started in virtual worlds, and questions started coming up. It's like, what's appropriate attire when you're representing IBM in a virtual world? Okay. Are furries business appropriate? Okay. And it went back and forth, and it got thrown to an internal group, and I got some contributions. And because there was like, well, one should wear business dress, and I sort of pointed out that there's no geography. Bermuda shorts are business dress in Bermuda. A Galabea is business dress in Egypt. They're not the same. And it's like, in Second Life, I can wear a parrot on my shoulder that listens to what you says and whispers translations into my ear. That's useful and good for business. You can't do that in real life. You can't apply the same standards. So, but the thing is, we throw through this, we bounce things around, and we produce a set of standards, which, at the base level, aren't really any different from our business conduct guidelines, but they do clarify a couple of things. But we published it, okay? Because a lot of other companies out there were suffering, we're going through the same sort of thing, and management is traditionally conservative. They're like, and a lot of business come out and say, we don't know, therefore we're going to apply the same rules. You have to turn up in suits and be boring. Which is not how you engage people in a real office. I mean, every one of you has an attachment for your avatar, I'm sure. Okay? Whether it's the hair and shoes, aforementioned, very important. It's a part of how you communicate. It's part of how you present yourself. You're not going to be able to compete if you restrict yourself, as a business person in Second Life. So by IBM publishing this, because it's a big company that's kind of take it seriously, it kind of set the standard in many ways. Okay, all these companies that weren't sure about it, where the people who were engaged in it said, no, we have to be able to have, I want to wear a cloak, that shimmers, and sends particles going out. Like, what's a particle? And then they can go, hey, IBM have published this, and their management can either look at it and go, well, if it's good enough for IBM, it's good enough for us. Or they'll read it and say, this kind of makes sense, because, we put thought into it. And you can set the standard, it saved furries in the business world, I would to say that. But in the sense, because, IBM looked at it reasonably and took a more liberal approach to things, it did open up doors and made it, I feel, made a difference. Hard to track, hard to prove, but, wave the blue flag, I am a IBM, it's one of the things that do like to call out, as a contribution that's made. So, the IBM Islands. Okay, this is probably people most know IBM in World 4. We had at least 12 islands, rose beneath the waters. Okay, now the way this came about is the CIO's office, that's the Central Information Office. Chief Information Officer, right, not the Central Intelligence Office. Anyway, them guys, they said, look, virtual boards is here, IBM needs to engage, we need expertise in this. You know, IBM is like a many-headed hydra, okay? They said, we have more people than Iceland has citizens, okay? We don't all march to the same tune. One department doesn't know what the other department's doing. It's like, there is corporate strategy. I mean, if you're a stockholder, please don't sell. Based on this thing. There is corporate strategy, there's high-level direction, but the fingers are given a lot of autonomy because that makes us good and flexible in the business world. It also means we don't have like a huge coordinated effort about certain sort of things. Eventually, we develop momentum. Okay, so, you know, a couple people looking, we had researchers been doing this for decades, you know, and stuff like that. So the CIO said, we're going to buy 12 islands, and we're going to let anybody who wants to at IBM, who sounds reasonable, have some land on them. Okay, you come to us, you know, and we're going to say, well, have you got a serious use for this? And if you give us any sort of coherent answer, we'll give you land, and if you don't make use of it, we'll take it back. Okay, that's where the islands came from. They put in some infrastructure themselves, you know, your typical amphitheaters, you know, presentation viewers, and stuff like that. But they gave people somewhere to play, somewhere to do things, somewhere to experiment with stuff, okay? And a whole bunch of stuff went up with no coherency to it, whatever. You walk down Irving Wolofsky Berger Boulevard and there's games over here, there's, you know, server software over here, there's, you know, you don't even know what it is, it looks like an art sculpture over there because it was just, you know, woo, you know, go play. You know, so it was just all sorts of stuff. You know, again, all IBM orientated. Okay, but some of it was about IBM products. Some of it was about things that we have done. You know, I met somebody at the business discussion last night saying IBM got her into virtual worlds because she wanted to attend a seminar on wind energy that we were hosting in Second Life. And, you know, things like that. You know, there's all these sort of, you know, different things that, you know, we played around with experimenting. You know, output from research. Research thrives on grants and sponsorship from people that want to do things. This is a great way they can showcase what they've done, draw attention to it. Just, you know, the whole gamut of stuff. Public service things. There's the IBM Sandbox. I was most involved with myself. I would spend weeks not moving out of the sandbox, just logging in and logging out and moving maybe 10 feet. And the world goes past. Kind of cool. The Second Life Ballet, which I'd forgotten about until I was kind of reviewing some slides, that was hosted on IBM land and stuff like that. Because, you know, the things that we weren't using on those 12 islands to, you know, develop IBM stuff, we put up like little pretty architecture and, you know, made into sort of public resources. You know, Sandbox got bigger. It was cool. So here's kind of like some pictures that I took. This, I think, is a museum, which is kind of cool. I don't know what's off in the background. I mean, it's just, you can see, just, you know, it's like the mainland. Just random things. One of our amphitheaters, you know, with the mega prims that people moaned about. And we would do big things in there, you know, and you know, we had some, you know, pretty big, that's my avatar in the middle. Oops. That's my Lotus Sphere parcel. It's my little 3D presentation over here. The bullets jumped out, but we're not talking about that. That was actually Lotus Brazil. Said, hey, you know, we want to do something. And I said, oh, well, I'm not doing anything with this part over here. Have part of my parcel. They built something. Never saw anyone there, but you know, it was kind of cool. In the spirit of things, there's a little ballet performance there. And here's the big party we had just before they were all destroyed. Because of course, you know, as you know, they're not there anymore. They sank beneath the waves. And there's a lot of questions about that. You know, we had a lot of questions about it. I mean, it took me kind of a week to deal with that. But you know, in the end, you know, IBM is a big company. They do things. You're a little guy in a big company, you get squished some of the times. But in the end, there's a lot of things that happen that I hate as a person, but understand as a stockholder. Okay? And that's the way big companies work. They are correct and right on average, but there are frequently places that are really good for some people and really bad for some people. That's why some people either leave after 3 years or stay for 30. You know, it's just the philosophy. So I understand what happened, and I'm going to explain it to you as I understand it. It's like they accomplished their mission. They seeded the place. They got a bunch of people interested. You know, kind of like the customers we help. You know, some of those people went on to do full islands. Okay. But the bottom line was that the CIO was paying for it. and other people were reaping the benefits. Okay, it's a requirement in IBM that each department, generates enough revenue to pay for itself. It's one way we keep our stockholders happy, and we don't get accused of being in a abusive monopoly like certain other big companies, because we all have to make money. So the CIOs, and we've done this for 3 years, and we're stopping. Okay, if you have perceived value from your presence in Second Life, go buy land. Some people did, most didn't. Some of the free areas migrated. There's still a sandbox. It's just in a different place, a different group funding it. So when we get to the question we had of how many islands were there, I think we had like 46 at the height. And to be honest, I have no idea how many there are now. That needs a hole in the map. I haven't looked there. I mean, I know there was a satellite of islands owned not by the CIO's office, but all the CIO islands are gone. They focus their efforts inside the firewall, and we'll come to some of that in a bit. There is more activity in OpenSIM, and I'll come to some of that in a bit too. But I don't know numbers. I don't know the exact numbers of islands. That's kind of, what happened and why it happened. Okay, it's very sad that, I would have loved to continue my Lotusphere parcel, but, again, we have the lessons learned. One of which is it's hard for IBM to consume Second Life. Okay, we're a big company. Okay, we've got to buy a paperclip. It takes $150 to process the purchase order. Right? And this is just how it works in a big company, because when you're buying a $100,000 facility, you need that sort of oversight and you need that sort of overhead. And again, it's one of those things. Big companies, there's always some bad eggs, and you got to protect yourself against that. And what they have there is not onerous, but it is tedious. And when you get to the very small end of a wedge, it can overwhelm you.